A scenario in which a continent somehow decides it will form in the Indian Ocean. And how would this happen? Well, it's impossible. But yeah. Unless we go millions of years into the future, who knows what will be going on then. And so the island, let's see. No, continents are kinda islands, kinda. And yeah, I know there's some islands going to get into this continent. But yeah. As you can see, it's going to rise up into the bay of something. No, I don't like the look of that continent. And look, see, even a bay formed. Or sea, whatever it's called. But yeah. And yeah, that's a weird shape, but let's deal with it. Into the Bay of Bengal. Down the coast of Indonesia. Meaning now there would be more choke points. Almost to touching Australia. Meaning that probably become very shallow. And yeah, sea has formed here, it looks like. This reminds me of something. And you may say it has infringed on other continents. And as you can see, they get like a weird panhandle kind of situation. Maybe enlarging it wouldn't hurt too much. But yeah, there will be lakes. I'm going to dash lakes and islands around now. And shown up. There's only a few nations who would have the capabilities to get there, but for the sake of injury. The ones nearby can easily get there, but the U.S. probably could. The U.S. meets with its allies. Yep, Portugal is sending, so is Spain, France, the U.K., Germany, and Brazil. Along with, you guessed it, many other nations are headed to this area. Including the Europeans, but can they make it in time? Yep. And going through all the straits, making a mess of themselves. China, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, and you get the point. Everybody wants to come. But who's going to land first? I would say Madagascar most likely, but yeah. With Australia, Madagascar, and Indonesia already here. Let's go over where they got their land. And Malaysia probably too. So Madagascar landed on the islands, the first 3 islands. Then they expand from, so let's say they are here. And here up to this island. And then the random border is drawn. For Madagascar, Australia, similar measure, including parts of these islands, which, yeah, as you can see, these 2 islands. Indonesia goes here. Malaysia managed to land here. Thailand takes here. Sri Lanka takes it right here to this lake, because it can't take much, because they're small. And let's see where India put their colony, right here. Iran, Saudi Arabia lands here. Iran lands there. The Europeans in the South Africa. South Africa lands over here, including the south of that island. And the USA finally arriving and drawing a border over here. Portugal lands. Germany managed to take land. Vietnam got some land. And China takes this land. Japan managed to land here somehow. South Korea. And now Tanzania has finally arrived, along with Kenya. Has arrived up here. And Somalia, unable to get there, struggles. Portugal, Spain. Now let's see where France goes. Well, actually, Britain lands on this island. And France lands over here. And Germany takes here. Let's see who signs the first treaty. Australia and Indonesia. And who was that? France, was it? Yeah, it was France. Decide up to here and over to here. And so it goes up to here, which means Indonesia is probably going to get this. And they decide to it. With France taking these lands, Australia doesn't get as much as Indonesia, probably, but yeah, they both get lots of land. So as you can tell, this continent's already being partitioned up. With the Indonesian area and Australian area as becoming colonies, basically, at this point. With who else is happy of this treaty? France and Australia. Which another meeting's held between Madagascar, Kenya, and South Korea, and Japan over these lands. Let's see how they divide it, guys. Well, as you can see, who's that? Tanzania's taken that. Kenya moves over to here. South Korea gets lands here, and Madagascar gain the most out of this treaty, which is leading to some tensions, but not too much. And so tensions are rising on this continent, as I guess you could guess. And then, well, the US, South Africa, to France all sign a treaty on the split of these lands, with the US, surprisingly, they take the most out of this. But it is the Treaty of Washington, so yeah, they're... And then Portugal takes land, Spain, and Germany. They all have taken lands in the south. Britain just takes over all of this island down here. And they want mainland. But the US one is pretty much becoming more and more of a US ally, if you think of it. Because they're kind of the US territory. But they're probably going to gain independence. With Germany and Britain having some disputes over lands. And guess who does for sure? France and Britain. With Malaysia and Thailand splitting the lands. And guess who jumps in? Indonesia and... not Vietnam, Sri Lanka. And they decide to partition like this. With Vietnam getting a massive amount. No, not Vietnam. This is Thailand. Thailand, China, and Sri Lanka got a lot out of this. China did make a colony somewhere now. Let's think of it. And so, yeah. Everybody took the lands. And yeah. Let's look at the rest. This area is a bunch of nations trying to get land. With over here, that's Japan, I think. Yeah, that's Japan. Japan takes a huge chunk of land. Saudi Arabia does. Iran does. And India does. And China landed where? Can't remember. That's bad. Oh yeah, they must have landed over there, let's say. Now that we know what India's doing. And then this is China's colony. Japan, that's Iran and Saudi Arabia, who, as we can tell, this continent is bad, not doing so well. But the rest of the lands are all agreed upon by the UN, because, yeah, the UN managed to have a peaceful resolution. Do the countries really agree on it, or are they just signing it for the sake of signing it? We'll find out. Madagascar is getting a huge chunk of land, except they think so, but then France gets this land. Really? What did France do to deserve this? But anyways, before that, with only a few nations agreeing, seems like this is going to fall apart soon. But everybody's going to get land out of this. It's just a question of who and why. And how will they get it? Peace has already basically died on this continent. Even allies are turning backs on each other in this continent. Because it's not technically their country, so the militaries are different. As some quickly start gaining independence. India wants access on that big lake. Who doesn't want lakefront access? Sounds so cool. And seemingly, the only colony that's upset is probably China's. But with the colony of Madagascar, so let's look at it on a map, claiming all the islands, despite the fact they claim all these islands, despite the fact that, yeah, in reality, the islands they own is this, right? With some going to the U.S.'s colony, right? That one, which they leave alone because why doesn't matter. But on the other hand, they disagree with France's claim. And the U.S. colony is really just developing into the United States of India. Really, if you think of it. And France is not in a good position for this war. And so, yeah. France being kicked out. But the invasion of the islands may go swift, while with American intervention being threatened if they land on the island. But France basically pushes them out of the islands. But their counteroffensive into the mainland, which is basically controlled by Madagascar. Madagascar repels us, and they agree to a peace treaty in which they annex this area. So basically, they're becoming weak. There's still land left over on this continent. France's colony is pathetic if you think of it. But Madagascar was directly involved. France was trying to aid it, but so on. Britain ends up at war, but that over there... Ooh. Oh wait, that's Germany they went to war with. Yep, that's France. But now let's look at the map. But what else could happen on this island? The Chinese colony declares war on Iran, thinking they can easily seize it. They think they can easily seize it, which they do. But one problem. Iran can just help move forces in, holding them back. So they end up expanding the war into Japan, which India disapproves, basically. But the only problem is that India does want to take over the continent because they claim it as theirs. So they go to excessive lengths to control all of us, as they kick China out of this continent. And the world just watches in surprise as this happens. And then they quickly storm into this colony. Yep, they do. Into which they claim all of this territory as their own. Chaos does erupt. Although people have already settled this continent, which is something I forgot to speak about. There's a few hundred. There's probably 100 million, maybe. Why am I doing this? So there is revolutions breaking out now. One major one broke out here, which is pro-Madagascar. And the democratic group, supported most likely by them. And don't forget, I forgot to mention mountains. But because I didn't, I'll just show you where the mountains are by adding another layer. And on this layer, we will look at mountainous terrain. Most of the mountains are around this area, but they get the thick over here and mountainous over here. So yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of mountain. But a mountain group overall rises up in this colony. And Americans are settling in the east too. Pro-American democratic forces rise up, specifically where Americans are settling, kind of like the Mexican-American War, which they kind of decide to unite with this group in their idea of joining the U.S.'s colony. And this group up here, these are the mountain people, kind of hard to invade, kind of hard to stop. But they only want the mountains, so yeah. But, yeah, the Madagascar Pro group has crossed into Madagascar. But one thing to keep in your head is that this is a big change. And I mean a big change. with the mountain group ending up at war with them, but eventually, after seeing how difficult this terrain is, they meet for peace. Successful. But Madagascar, which is one of the stronger players on this continent, joins the war. Well, the war on South Korea, and they called in this colony. The US quickly jumps in against India. Why? Because they had to. But France and Portugal and these places, even an island of the US was seized by France, joins. This is the Great Continental War, they call it. With that area, since they were gave independence, we're told they can have a bit more land if they do join this side. With Britain joining the blue team, along with Australia, France's colony joins the red team along with Indonesia's. Vietnam's is put on the blue team for some reason. Thailand's is. Malaysia's joins the red team, and Sri Lanka's joins the red team, with Tanzania's and Kenya's joining the blue team. But the red team has the advantage at first. Numerical supremacy is what they use because they have more countries. But this is a flawed idea because the better navy belongs to the blue team. You know why? Because it has some of the stronger nations, including the United States. But this has basically broke away and became the United States of the new United States, which let's name this continent. Okay. And since it's a new continent, that's all liquid. With Vietnam's colony and Sri Lanka's collapsing, Vietnam's and Thailand's collapsing with the fall of this colony, basically. But I did say they have the superior navy, so they set up naval blockades, and they just wreak havoc navally. With a big naval blockade being made and the eventual counter-offensive being made in this region. But with this, they try to attack Australia, which is a bad idea. And yeah, I'm using too big of a color without even thinking twice about it. But with this being one of the worst repels yet in the war, and so they're in desperate need of help, as their army has completely become disorganized and in trouble in this area. But this is mostly because of American intel helped this. With the invasion of the French colony being a big deal, as they managed to cut it in two, and then Britain uses its navy, which it has recreated, the large Royal Navy, with the French colony surrendering over, which is a big deal, especially for the European front, considering the European countries all teamed up against this idea, with the Portuguese and Spanish colonies barely having a military to call themselves, so yeah. With Indonesia's colony being where the real fighting happens, with a separate peace treaty being attempted by India with the neighbors to try and get them to switch sides, fails. But their invasion of Madagascar is in full force. The biggest threats on this continent in terms of supplying are pretty big. But the invasion of the Indonesian colony goes pretty swift, until they get near the north and take the country out, and then a big offensive is made. China is supporting the blue team in this war, mostly because of what the red team has done to their colonies. But let's look at it. So yeah, even managing to cut a landing here with the superior navy is the only reason they're able to win. With a landing here being tough and hard to imagine. With it becoming so bad that India's colony surrenders because it's fully blockaded, and yeah, so on until it surrendered and fell and stuff. After a few years fighting, The Great War of the New Continent is over. The United States of the New Indian Continent. Why am I calling it the New Indian Continent? Because there's the Indian subcontinent, the Republic of Mountain People. Yep, that's the name of it. And then we have the Republic, the English, the New English Republic. No, that's a dumb name. The Southern Isles. The Indian Isles. Yep, that's a great name. And now this becomes known as New Australia. But would an Australian name be? Because it's still a colony. This is a new nation that formed after all the African nations left. It's called the African United States. Nope, that's a bad name. The African Federation. Nope, the Indian Federation, even though it's not India, but this is the Indian continent. The New Indian Continent. Now we have Japan, Korea, and we have the Northern Empire. And these nations might not get along well, but that's a lot of nations considering the size of the continent. It's not many. It's a lot of big nations. And the United Indian States. But Brazil, unfortunately, didn't make it in time, which they're sad about. But you found out those mountain people were Brazilian. Ooh, from Brazil. And they speak Portuguese. The mountain people are something. But they kind of look like a wolf country. And that's all for today's video. Please subscribe. We're 172 subscribers from our goal. Also, tomorrow's video and the weekend's videos are all pre-recorded. So they'll be coming out while I'm gone to my bocce tournament. So yeah, please subscribe. And that's all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out! Bye, guys. Please subscribe.